Okay, so without further ado here, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. Um, listen, this is a really timely webinar. We hope you all feel that. We hope you're here because this is something that y'all need to lock into and look more into. I'm going to make you a promise kind of up front that this particular, webinar is not going to be around theory. The April deadline is weeks away now, and so you're here because you need to know what to do, what to actually do, and that's exactly what we're going to cover. So, without further ado, again, let's get into introductions. My name is Hayden Baillio. I'm CMO at Hounder. We are a design, development, and marketing agency that works closely with public agencies, higher ed, institutions on digital strategy. Then that includes web governance and ADA compliance, along with a plethora of other things. But also for the past 3 years, I've gotten to work alongside hundreds of public sector, higher ed, and enterprise teams, helping them navigate compliance requirements and build programs that actually hold up under scrutiny. Joining me today is the Maria Lamardo. She's a senior accessibility program manager at GitHub. Maria has spent years in the trenches on this type of stuff, auditing, real sites, building real programs, testing real assistive technology. And I've had the pleasure to watch her present on this topic at some of the biggest conferences in the accessibility space. So I'm genuinely excited to get to speak with her today on this topic. She's going to be taking the second half of this webinar and showing you exactly how to do a WCAG audit and how it works in practice. Maria, do you want to say, a quick hello before we jump in?
Hey everybody, excited to be here and hope we all learn a thing or two.
Yeah, well, that's the hope. I hope you all come away with, a nugget or two. All right, so before we go straight into compliance, I would like to talk about why this exists in the first place. 1.3 billion people worldwide live with a disability. That's one in six people, and 26% of US adults have a disability. And so, the numbers are no longer abstract, right? These are the residents that are trying to pay their water bill, their constituents that are trying to submit a permit application, and they're just, people trying to find out if a public meeting was canceled, right? So if your digital services aren't accessible, you're not just failing like the regulation, you're failing the people you were created to serve. And so it's exciting that we're going to take this by the reins and get going. So that's the framing I want to carry through for the rest of my session. This is a big number. 96% though is of the top million websites have detectable WCAG conformance failures on their home pages. That is the home page, the most polished, most maintained page of any site is still failing. So if you're sitting there kind of thinking, we've done some work, we're probably mostly okay. The data says otherwise. And this is not to call anybody out, right? Just most organizations are not okay. And most organizations don't really have a clear picture of exactly where they stand. So the question is no longer whether your site has accessibility issues. It almost certainly does. It's the question is whether you know where they are and whether you can prove that you are systematically addressing them. That shift of framing is hopefully this is what the rest of my section, the start of this, is all about, because you can't fix everything overnight, right? So since I want to start on the same foundation with everybody, ADA Title II has always covered digital services. That's for the 34 years that it's been in existence. But not until 2024 there was really no specific technical standard attached to it, right? So the DOJ's final rule changed that. For the first time, public entities have a clearly defined technical benchmark. That's WCAG 2.1 level AA. So it covers everything, though, access through a browser, so your website, your mobile apps, your PDFs, your online forms, your social media accounts, even third-party tools that are embedded in your site. Literally all of it. And there are two main deadlines that we need to kind of look at right here, right? April 24th, 2026, coming up in a few weeks, is for entities that are serving populations of 50,000 people or more. And April 26th, 2027 is for entities under 50,000 and special district governments. It's more runway, but probably less than you think, especially if you're asking the people in bucket one, right? So if you're in the first group, though, just to be direct, the deadline is not approaching. The deadline is here, and so hopefully we can make some things happen. But first, I got a quick question for everybody. So, quick poll, if you can. Would love to see anybody drop A, B, C, or D in the chat, just to see where the room is. But A, we've had a formal audit in the last 12 years, 12 months. Oh, they can only react. Okay, cool. Sorry. Good to know. So let's do, instead of A, B, C, D in the chat, let's do a heart for A, thumbs up for B, be creative, but I guess this is going to fail. So we've had a formal audit in the last 12 months. We've done some work, but nothing is documented. We know we need to act, but haven't started yet. And D, we think we're okay, but honestly aren't sure. I guess, good, good. So I see some hearts. Whether or not you said A, B, or C, or D on this, which you couldn't because you're giving me emojis, which I'm thankful for. I think the path forward is the same for everybody. You still need documentation, you need a prioritized plan, and you need to be able to demonstrate structured effort. That's what defensible compliance looks like, and that's what I want to explain next. Probably the most important slide that I'm going to be giving today is this one right here. So write it down if you need to, take a screenshot. We'll be sending this later, but most agencies believe that ADA compliance means fixing the website. Get the audit score up, fix the errors, be done. But that's not really how this works. So perfect compliance, zero WCAG fails on every page, is not achievable in a sustainable way. Now, my counterpart might disagree, but I highly doubt it that she disagrees because websites change constantly, right? Content gets published, third-party tools get updated, new failures get introduced, and you cannot achieve and hold a perfect score, right? So, and more importantly, that's not what the DOJ evaluates, or just not all of what the DOJ evaluates. What protects an agency is defensible compliance. So, a documented, ongoing, structured program that demonstrates you are systematically identifying accessibility issues, prioritizing them by risk, fixing them with timestamps, and then monitoring for regression. Fixes without documentation are legally indistinguishable from doing nothing. And I'll try to reiterate that. Fixes without documentation are legally indistinguishable from doing nothing. The agency, your agency that has fixed 200 accessibility issues informally over 3 years with zero documentation has the same legal standing as the agency that's fixed nothing because they can't prove it. Now, I know that sounds harsh, but I'm strictly talking legal regulatory compliance here, right? The agency that's documented 50 fixes with timestamps, they have assigned owners, they have resolution dates, they had a prioritization rationale for those. That agency is a lot more defensible. So hopefully we can get to a place at the end of this webinar where you have a direction moving forward. Let's let's make something kind of set in stone though, because I think a lot of agencies are operating on kind of a vague sense of what compliance means, and vague doesn't protect you. So when a formal accessibility complaint is filed against a public agency, whether through the Department of Justice, the Office of Civil Rights, or directly through a civil suit, the investigation is not primarily technical. They're not sitting down with your website and running, Axe dev tools or something like that. What they're doing is asking for documentation. They want to see evidence that your agency has been treating digital accessibility as a structured, ongoing responsibility, not a project that you ran once and then moved on from. So there are 5 categories, I think, of documentation that come up consistently in enforcement proceedings. So if you have them, you are a lot closer to being defensible. If you don't, you're exposed regardless of how much actual, fix work you've done underneath. So I want to go through each one of these real quick. I'm gonna grab some water real quick. Sorry. The first thing they ask for is going to be a recent accessibility audit, right? And let's be specific about recent and audit, what they actually mean here, because both words get stretched quite a bit in this realm. Recent means within the last 12 months. An automated scan from 2 years ago that someone saved as a PDF is not a recent audit. Neither is a vendor's VPAT from when you bought the platform. And an audit means more than a scan. So the scope of an audit is a lot more, and Maria will get really more in depth on that later, but it means you have a documented scope. So what pages, what user journeys, what document types were evaluated. It means that you have a methodology, what tools were used, what manual testing was performed. And it means you have findings. So you have a structured record of what was found, classified by severity, tied to specific WCAG criteria. An automated scan report is a good starting point, but a defensible audit is a documented process with a clear scope and clear methodology and clear findings. So if you're ever asked to produce it, that distinction makes a big difference. The second kind of document is going to be a risk-based prioritization framework. It's really not enough to show that you found issues and fix some of them. Investigators want to see evidence that you made deliberate decisions about what to fix first, and that those decisions were based on service impact and user risk, not just whatever was technically easiest for you to fix. The question they're really asking is, did this agency look at their accessibility failures and ask which of these is actually blocking residents from completing critical tasks? Or did they just fix the low-hanging fruit and call it progress? A risk-based prioritization framework, what a mouthful, sorry, doesn't have to be complicated. It means your remediation backlog has to have severity ratings. It means that transactional failures, the big ones, the things that block someone from submitting a permit or completing a payment, sit at the top of the list and they're being worked on. It means that you can show a clear line from your audit findings to your remediation sequence. So if someone asks you why you fixed contrast issues on your homepage before fixing the inaccessible license application form, you need to have a better answer than, well, that's what our developer worked on first, right? Thirdly, is you need to have that remediation log with timestamps. Probably one of the most single important documents in your compliance program, and it's the one that most agencies probably don't have or just don't have robust enough. Every accessibility issue your organization identifies needs a row. The date it was found, a description of the issue, the WCAG criterion it violates, the severity, the people assigned to fix it, the target date, all that stuff. So every row tells a story in this, and the aggregate of those rows tells the story of an organization that's taking this seriously, that it's a process that has accountability, that is making documented progress. Internalize this though, unfixed issues with documented owners and target dates are going to be more defensible than a fixed issue with no record. And I know that's like, it seems kind of backwards, but like, showing that you have a process and that you are sticking to it and that you are actively making progress towards something is going to be more defensible than an issue you fixed 6 months ago that has nothing written down. Documentation is the epitome of legal protection, but it's not the fix. So our fourth document here, moving on, is going to be evidence of ongoing monitoring. So this is where a lot of agencies who did do an audit tend to kind of fall short. They ran a scan, they fixed some things, and they moved on. And 12 months later, their site has regressed and they have no record of anything happening kind of in between. So ADA Title II compliance is not a project. It's an operational responsibility. So investigators know the difference between an organization that ran a one-time sprint and an organization that has a functioning accessibility program. Evidence of ongoing monitoring means that you need to have a scan cadence. The cadence doesn't have to be perfect, right? But weekly automated scans, monthly manual spot checks on your highest traffic pages, quarterly reviews with your leadership, and like at least one big full audit annually. And that's a program that will hold up. The single scan from 8 months ago is not a program that will hold up. Fifth is going to be vendor and government's documentation. The vendor part of this is going to be by far the hardest to achieve, but not impossible. It's very hard. No, none of this is easy, right? It takes time and effort, but this is hard. So this category tends to catch agencies kind of, I feel like, off guard when we talk to, because it's about how your organization has structured its responsibility for accessibility. So who owns accessibility inside of your agency? Is there a designated ADA coordinator with documented responsibilities? Is there an accessibility policy in your writing? Does it say anything specific about digital accessibility and WCAG conformance? And when it comes to your vendors, every third party tool that your residents interact with, your licensing system, your payment portal, your online forms, your embedded maps, they carry the same accessibility obligation as your core website. So, have you requested VPATs from those vendors? Have you reviewed them? Have you put accessibility requirements in your contracts before you even go to procurement, right? An agency can show an agency that can show a written accessibility policy, a designated owner, and contractual accessibility requirements in their vendor agreements is demonstrating a level of organizational accountability that truly matters when it comes to brass tacks. Now, this is the fifth one, and I'm excited. I'm going to send you an email later that's going to have a lot of these that you can just copy onto your own drive here. But these five documents together are legal protection. They're not the number of issues that you fix, not your kind of automated scan score. This documentation is structured, accountable, ongoing. This is an ongoing program. Once again, still doesn't take anything. You still have to do it, right? But that's the gist of it, right? So, all right. So you heard about the five documents here. Before we move on to kind of my next little phase right here, I want to know where the room stands. We can't drop how many of these you have in the chat, but I don't know. I didn't foresee this problem of not being able to chat, so that's on me. But where I want you to think about it, internalize it here. How many of these do you actually have ready to produce if the DOJ came knocking today? Like how many of those five could you truly produce? Um, if you're at zero, I think you're not alone. And if you're at one or two, you're probably ahead of the curve, honestly. So that's exciting. So, well, since we can't, since I don't have chat though, Maria, we'll move on here. Uh, the honest picture of where I think most agencies are, without judgment, because the situation is always understandable here. Most agencies fall into this middle row here. Uh, some fixes have been done. Maybe a developer cleaned up some contrast issues last year. Maybe someone added alt text to an images after a complaint. Maybe a redesign improved your navigation, but none of it was documented. There's no log, there's no timestamps, there's no prioritization framework, there's no ownership structure. So good work happened, but it can't be proven. I think a smaller group is probably in the danger zone. They installed an overlay tool, they got a certificate of compliance from the vendor and moved on. I want to be direct as possible on this part. Overlay tools do not make you compliant. They have been named in multiple ADA complaints. They have been challenged in court. The National Federation of the Blind has publicly opposed them. So installing one and believing it covers you is a pretty significant risk. It's not to say that they don't have their uses. It's just if that's your one and done, it's not going to hold up. Good news is that getting from the middle to like a defensible position is incredibly achievable, and it doesn't require a perfect site. It requires starting the documentation and the governance now, and then moving forward and actually executing the fixes that you say you will. So you know what defensible, governance looks like. You know where most agencies are. Let's talk about what to actually do right now. And I think there's three priorities in this order. Priority one, these are very low hanging fruits. Fix what blocks people from completing transactions, not cosmetic issues, not low contrast text in the site footer, the transactional workflows. That means permit applications, payment portals, benefit forms, public record requests. If someone cannot complete a task that the government requires them to complete, that's going to be your highest level risk exposure and your first remediation target. Priority two is going to be to start documentation today, if possible, right? Open the remediation log that we send you later, seriously, and if you and kind of start logging everything you already know is broken. Every row you add, even for issues that haven't been fixed yet, is evidence of good faith effort, which is a whole nother thing, good faith compliance. So an unfixed issue with a documented owner and target date is once again going to be more defensible than a fixed issue with no record. And then three here is fix at the template level, not the page level. This once again another low hanging fruit. Um, Sometimes you just waste time. That you try to find a missing skip nav link on the homepage and fix that one page, but the skip nav is missing everywhere because it's a template issue. Fix the template and you resolve hundreds of instances at once. All right. So you can go to the next slide, Maria. You know what defensible looks like. This is my time. My time's done. So the question is, how do you actually audit your site to find issues that matter? So that's where Maria comes in. Maria, it's all yours now.
Thank you, Hayden. That was great. So now let's talk about conducting an accessibility audit. Our goal with the accessibility audit isn't to create some huge report with 300 item checklists, right? It's really to get clarity. There are some practical goals to this. We want to make sure that we're reducing risk, we're improving the service access, and creating a roadmap. We want to identify what's blocking users, understanding how widespread issues are, and create that prioritized fixed list so that our team can execute it. So I would say number one is to identify the barriers that prevent people from completing their key tasks. Number two is to measure the scope. What should be like isolated page issues versus template-wide issues, like Hayden mentioned. Also produce remediation ready tickets or issues that have clear steps and acceptance criteria. And Hayden covered a little bit of what a really good issue would look like, but making sure that each issue includes things like severity, what the user impact is, where it happens on your site, how to reproduce it, and what is the expected user result. That way, engineers or designers can get into this and know exactly how they can fix it. And then making sure that you're prioritizing fixes that matter because they have a high impact and risk. And then it's really good for establishing a baseline so that you can track progress over time. This is crucial, tracking progress over time. And again, these audits are not just finding issues, but we're translating those issues into a plan with clear owners, making sure we understand the effort levels for each of these and the timelines for the resolution. So here's a quick audit model. I would say number one is inventory. Make a list of all of your digital assets, whatever you have. This includes things like your websites, any subsites, any forms, PDFs, and importantly, third-party tools that are embedded in your services. Things like payment providers, scheduling widgets. And then you want to pick a set of sites and flows that represent the real experience. Think of your top traffic pages, top tasks, and examples of each of the templates that are commonly used and your most used forms and PDFs. And this is where you would then combine automated testing with manual testing. And I'll go over a little bit of the difference between both of them, but automated tools will really help you catch repeatable issues at scale. But the real blockers of this don't show up unless you're doing manual testing. And this will help you figure out if people can find the information they need, if they can understand it, and they can complete all the actions that they need to take. And can they do this using assistive technologies or only a keyboard? Next, you want to make sure that you're reporting your issues in a way that can speed up remediation. So look at them. You can look at them by critical user journey, by components, by templates, and really the output of this should roll directly into a prioritized backlog. And a formal remediation plan will also help you. And again, we're saying that you should have identified owner and timelines here, and then they should be tracked from discovery to verification and release. This really lets you demonstrate timely progress, prioritized high impact barriers to prevent regressions. So think of an audit as a decision-making tool, and you're trying to answer some questions like what is broken, where is it broken, how bad is it, and what do we need to fix first? Now, here's a quick checklist of areas to pay close attention to. Number one, I would say the most important is your critical user journey. So think about those top tasks, applying for things, paying for things, scheduling things, any requests. Next, look at your templates and components. Look at your headers, your navigation, your footers, alerts, any reusable component that you're using throughout your sites. Also, look at your content pattern. Are they accessible? Are you using inclusive design principles? Look at your heading structure, your link text, your images and alt text and use of color. Next is your forms. This is a big problem, making sure that they have labels, instructions, the right error handling, focus order. And we'll get into some of these details later. Also, your documents, PDFs, Word documents, are you tagging them correctly? Is the reading order correct? Are you using the right heading hierarchy? And don't forget about third-party tools. A lot of people think that just because they don't own them, they don't need to be responsible for their accessibility, but actually, you you decided to include them. You're responsible for making sure that they're accessible. So this could include things like payment processors, scheduling tools, and any embedded widget. They're often a source of major risk. All right, so let's talk a little bit about automated versus manual testing. Automated testing tools are great at a couple of things. Number one is to find common and repeatable issues really fast. You can find things like color contrast problems, missing labels, missing alt text, and some ARIA misuse patterns. And we'll go over some of these in a little bit. But really, it's really great for having regression checks in your CI/CD. Automated testing are a really good way to monitor progress over time, making sure you're not adding regression. But also, they can tell you the entire experience and whether the experience works for somebody. So they don't reliably catch things like, can you complete the task using only a keyboard? Does the focus order make sense? Does the screen reader announce the right information at the right time? Do form errors give you enough guidance to recover? And overall, does this flow make sense? So though automated testing is necessary, it's not sufficient. So you might want to start with that to identify high volume issues, then do a structured manual test for your high priority journeys. Now, manual testing essentials include things like keyboard only run through the flow. Can you reach every control you see where you are? A quick screen reader spot check. And I recommend that you adopt 1 to 2 tools that your org can standardize on and look at things like headings, labels, buttons, error messages. And a zoom and reflow check. Can someone use a site at a higher zoom or a small screen without losing content or functionality? Now, manual tests can discover issues that block task completion, which are often most likely to create world harm and risks. And then there are ways to keep it efficient, which is to test your high impact flows first, and then testing your templates and components that are reused throughout your site. And of course, I do want to call out that having people who use assistive technology natively will give you the best results for your manual testing because they know the expected experience. They know these tools inside and out, and they know what should be happening. Now let's go over some common accessibility issues that people might encounter across the web. Hayden already mentioned this, but there's a handy report from Web A Million. It's called the Web A Million report, and it is an accessibility evaluation of the home pages of the top 1 million websites. And they found that around 96% of the home pages have accessibility issues. That is a huge number. And actually, they found an average of 50 accessibility errors per page. That's pretty scary. Now, luckily, they found that 96% of these issues actually fall within 6 categories. So I would love to go over those 6 categories today. And these common errors have been the same for the past 4 years. And addressing just a few types of these issues can significantly improve the accessibility across the web. For the WebAIM report, they have low color contrast as the first one, missing alternative text, empty links, missing form input labels, empty buttons, and missing document language. Now, there are other reports from Paciello Group, Browser Stack, and Site Improve that highlight additional errors. And those errors include things like visual indicators, headings, keyboard navigability, and missing ARIA attributes. So let's go over a few of those. Luckily, W3C created WCAG in order to provide some guidance for content creators to make their digital content more accessible. Here's the link to that. But I would say that really work hard to bring lived experiences into your design process to really understand how people are using your applications and content. Just adhering to WCAG criteria, you might miss some really important points. Now, WCAG has four main guiding principles, so kind of four buckets where all of their guidelines fall under. The first one is perceivable. So you don't want to make something that's invisible to all the senses. Operable, you must not require an interaction that a user cannot perform. Understandable, the content and operation cannot go beyond the user's understanding. And robust, which means that all content should remain accessible as technology evolves. Now let's break this down and focus in the common issues that appear under each principle. Remember that it's easier to prevent, catch, and fix these common issues if your team is integrating accessibility into your software development lifecycle. So for that first category of perceivable, meaning that you don't make something invisible to all the senses. This includes things like providing alternative text for any non-text content or time-based media, creating content that can be presented in different ways without losing information or structure, and also making it really easy for users to see and hear your content. So some of the most common issues under that criteria, under that guiding principle is low color contrast, meaning that you're not providing enough color contrast between the text and its foreground, missing alternative text, and focus indicator. So when a component has focus, there should be a visible focus indicator around it. So let's go over each of these and how to fix them. The first one is low color contrast, which really calls out that you should be providing enough color contrast between your text and its background. That way, people who have low vision or cannot see the full range of colors can read the content. The recommended testing for this is automated testing can usually catch most color contrast issues, but manual testing is required for some instances like placeholder text. And I do have a little activity to go over today. So let me switch over to that. So in this activity, we see two lines of text. One says, this color contrast is too low, and it's kind of like a light green, bluish color. And if I go ahead and inspect it, I'm going to inspect it and I'm going to go to the styles, and I am using Chrome. A lot of the browsers have this type of tool available. If I go to the color contrast ratio after selecting that aquamarine color, I can see the color picker, and I can see that the color contrast ratio right now is at 1.22. And it says that it should be at a double A for, at a 3 to meet double A and 4.5 to meet triple A. And as I kind of change my color selection, we can see that color changing on the screen. And also we see that color changing in the contrast ratio changing on the selector here. So we just want to make sure that that color contrast has the right ratio. Oop, and it looks like it stopped presenting. Give me just 1 second. Let me move this out of the way. Alrighty. So that was this slide, and I do have some additional resources for you to check out after. The next criteria I want to talk about is missing alternative text, where it really requires you to provide text alternative to non-text content. That way, this can be translated into other assistive technologies. And the recommended testing for this is really automated, which can catch the fact that something is missing in the alt text. However, manual testing can catch whether or not that alternative text that you've given something is actually meaningful and descriptive. And here are some resources, and I do have a few examples coming up. In this example, I have a picture of a puppy rolling around in grass, and I've given it the alt text of puppy rolling on the grass with Scott's super soft toilet paper. And this alt text is beautiful, and it describes the image, and it makes total sense. But it makes total sense if the design reason why I've added this picture is to perhaps sell Scott's super soft toilet paper. If instead my reasoning for adding this picture was something like, oh, I run an adoption agency for puppies, I might want to add an alt text that says adorable and happy puppy rolling on the grass ready to be adopted. So again, it has completely different meanings based on this alt text, but there are completely different reasons as to why I, as a designer, might want to add this picture to my website. So think about the purpose of an image to your website. And if that image has no purpose, it might just be decorative, in which case you want to hide it from assistive technology so that they're not encountering something that's just there for purely decorative reasons. The next one I want to go over is focus indicator issues. And the guidance here is just to provide visual focus indicator when an element has focus. That way people can determine visually where they are and where the keyboard has focus. The recommended testing for this is really just manual. And the way to test for this is just press the tab key on your keyboard and make sure that you can see the focus indicator always present as you tap through the page. Now, I do want to show this example here. This is a great resource that I'll keep referring to during this talk, the ARIA Authoring Practices Guide. So I'm just going to start tabbing through it. And as I tap through it, I want you to notice that there is a clear focus indicator as I tap through the page. So I am always aware of where that focus is on the page. All right, going back to our presentation, here are some resources for you to use for that color indicator. Next, I want to talk about another guiding principle, which is operable. And some of the meaning for this. This is making sure that your interface forms, controls, and navigation are all operable, meaning that all functionality should be available from a keyboard. You should also be providing users enough time to read and use your content, making sure that you're not designing content in a way that is known to cause seizures or physical reactions, and that you make it easier for users to operate through functionality through various inputs beyond just the keyboard. Alrighty, so some of the common issues under this guiding principle is empty links, missing form input labels, headings, and keyboard navigability. So these are pretty big ones. Let's go over each of these. So the first one is empty links. You want to make sure that you're providing link text or text associated with the link that describes the purpose of the link's destination. That way people understand the purpose of the link and determine whether they want to follow that path. The recommended testing here is automated. They can catch empty links, but manual testing will catch whether or not something has a meaningful descriptive link text. Now, I'm going to show you this link activity, and for that, I'm actually going to go ahead and turn on my screen reader. I am using a Mac, so I'm going to be using VoiceOver.
VoiceOver on Chrome, link examples, vertical line, APG, vertical line, double.
Let me just mute that. VoiceOver has this little handy box. That way you can see what the screen reader is picking up.
The link skipped, visited, link, image, W3C, link, image, WebEx, visited, link, APG, home, visited, link.
So you can see that it tells me when something's a link, whether or not I visited it, and the name of that link. This also allows me to pull this thing called a roto tool that gives me a link, a list of links.
Links menu. Heading level 1, link examples, heading level 2.
Oh, give me
level
one
2,
second.
About this example. Heading level 1, link examples.
All right,
Heading
it
level 2,
is not
no item,
coming
no
up.
items in
Oh,
links menu.
it's on
Heading
my
level 1, link,
browser.
index for
All
no
right.
item, no heading, no items in, no items in, links, no items in, links menu.
Oh,
Heading level
yeah,
1,
it's on my
index
other
for level 2,
screen. That's what's
this
happening.
page,
Give me 1 second.
voiceover off,
Oh, give me 1 second. It went to my other monitor. Let me try again.
voiceover on Chrome, index vertical line H bullet links menu. On item ARIA authoring practices guide, APG,
All right, I am not able to move it over. Okay, I'm sharing my monitors and they're not collaborating, but pretty much it shows a list of all the links. And if all of the links, instead of being very descriptive, like about the index, about by examples by role or examples by property, if they all read more, learn more, read more, rare more, I would have no context to where that would lead me. So making sure that you have descriptive link text is really important. All right, next, let's talk about input forms and missing labels, making sure that you're providing those labels to describe the input's purpose. That way people know what kind of data is expected. The recommended for this is automated, which they can catch whether something has a label, but manual will help you investigate whether or not something has a proper meaning. Here's a little activity where I will use my screen reader again. And I'm going to tap to this first field here.
Fields are name, enter first and last name, required, edit text, email, example, jane.doe@gmail.com.
So you see that not only did it read the label, but it also read
voiceover off,
the little hint that I had, the little instructions that I had underneath. So if I go ahead and inspect this, you'll see under the accessibility settings here, and I'm using Chrome, there is a computer property that tells me exactly some details about that input. So it says the input has a name of name, which is being picked up by the label. If I kind of hover over it, you can see it being highlighted on the main page. And it also says that I have this description of enter first and last name. And if I scroll down, it says that it's being grabbed by the helper text, which is grabbed with ARIA described by. And I know I'm getting a little technical here, but I do want to call this out so that you can start thinking about the relationship between how assistive technology really uses and leverages this type of data and structure to provide more information for the user. And it kind of goes beyond semantic HTMLs with the use of ARIA. All right, next is a headings issue, which you want to make sure that the headings are describing topic or purpose, similar to the links, right? That way people can understand the information on the site and how it is organized. And really, manual testing is great to make sure that those headings are descriptive. There are some resources that you can use to kind of help you map out all of the headings on the page. A couple of guidelines here are to use headings to give your page structure, making sure that you're nesting heading in a hierarchical order. So going from H1 all the way down to H6, making sure that you're not skipping headings. You're not going from H1 all the way to H4. Using H1 as the most important heading on the page and really only using it once. Using descriptive headings. And then the heading activity here is just kind of showing you, and I'll use that tool that I provided. It kind of shows you that everything is kind of embedded into their own category, and all of the headings are nested under that category to kind of group and keep it all together. Alrighty, next up, we're moving into keyboard navigability. So this is another guiding principle. Oh, no, sorry. This is another failure type under this category. So the guidance here is that all functionality must be operable to the keyboard or keyboard interface. That way people who use those interfaces can use your application without eye-hand coordination. Recommended testing really is manual testing that you should navigate and operate everything with your keyboard. And I'm going to quickly show you this example where here's an accordion where I can kind of click through it and everything will expand and collapse. And if I go ahead and try to use my keyboard, I'm also able to not only just see that indicator that we talked about before, but as I use my enter key or space bar, I'm also able to open those up. I do want to show you what this looks like with the screen reader. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it on, and I'm going to try to go ahead and expand and collapse some of them. And I want you to see what the screen reader picks up.
Item 2 collapsed button. Item 3 collapsed. Item 2 collapsed button. Item 2 expanded button. Item 1 collapsed. Item 2 expanded.
So not only did it tell me that it's a button, it also told me the state, whether it's expanded or collapsed. And
Voiceover off.
I'm gonna go ahead and turn off my screen reader. But if I go ahead and click that button and inspect it, and I know I'm getting a little technical here, but if we look at that, we also see that I've added ARIA expanded true. And as I kind of toggle it between expanded and collapse, you can kind of see that being toggled. And this piece of information is what assistive technologies will grab to then relay to the user, hey, this is what's happening here. So again, just trying to piece all the functionalities together so you understand how all of this comes together. And here are some awesome resources. And that site that I shared with you at the beginning, and I'll continue to share at the end, really helps you build some of this custom components in the right way. All right, so now we're in our next guiding principle, which is understandable, making sure that the information that you're providing to users is understandable, keeping content readable, and again, understandable, making sure that your web pages appear and operate in predictable ways, and help users avoid and correct mistakes. So some of the most common issues with this one are things like missing document language. And this is a super quick demo. We just want to make sure that you're setting that language attribute to the page. This is super, super easy. And this helps assistive technology and user agents render text more accurately once that language is identified. And automated tool can catch these really, really quickly. However, manual testing can help you determine that you are using the correct language. So I'm just going to show you the French example here. So as you can see, my screen reader is set to English, but because the space language is set to French, look at what happens here.
Voiceover on Chrome.
Introduction à l'accessibilité du web.
Link.
L'original en anglais.
Link.
Traduction.
So even though it's in English and it keeps saying link, 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 we see that it's speaking with a French accent, and it's, identified that this is an English, a French site. All right, last guiding principle is robust. And for this, we want to make sure that things remain accessible as technologies advance, so that we're maximizing the compatibility between current and future user agents, including assistive technologies. And the common issue here are things like empty buttons, missing ARIA attributes. So let's go over the empty buttons really quick. The guidance here is making sure that your button elements have a programmatic name. That way, people who are using assistive technologies can gather information about that button and whether they're going to activate it, what the state of this is, right? And track the status of this button. Now, automated tools will catch whether or not something has a programmatic name. But of course, manual testing will tell you if that's the right name. But I'm going to show this to you, and I'm not going to turn on my screen reader. I would like you to kind of think about this and guess. But I'm going to inspect this button here. That is a little magnifying glass. It's just an image, right? It's just a button of a magnifying glass. And in my accessibility tools, I'm going to the computer properties, the accessibility tab under the inspector tools. I'm going to the computer properties and seeing that it has a name of search. Now, how I got that is that it has an ARIA label of search, and you can see that being set in the button here. So now, if you guess correctly, you would have determined that if I land on that with my screen reader,
Search button.
it has search. It recognizes search as that name. Now, this next one is another example of something very similar. So it's another search little icon inside a button, but this time the input has the word search right above it. So if I look, I've actually used ARIA labeled by to, oh, no, I'm looking at the button. Give me one second. ARIA labeled by to set that name. So you can see ARIA labeled by search label, which is that text that appears on the top. So if something's visible on the page and you just kind of want to grab that in case you ever want to change it and have that map directly to the button, you can use something like this, and it's going to name it the same way that an ARIA label would. So again, different ways to use ARIA in these instances. Now, missing ARIA attributes. The guidance here is for all user interface components, and their have corresponding name, role, state, property, and values programmatically available. And I've shown you throughout this presentation a couple of examples of this. But the impact here is that we want to make sure that people who are using assistive technologies can gather information about said interface control. So these are the things I kept referencing back to, right? Like how ARIA describe can help you map something, how ARIA expanded is set to true or false, and how that's communicated. And the recommended testing for this is automated, will catch some of the missing attributes and values, but manual testing will really help you test custom components, especially when they're not semantically available, to make sure that that is done correctly. Now, let's go to the tabs activity. For this one, it's pretty similar to the accordion one, and I'm going to go ahead and turn on my screen reader. Just so you know, there's a button element in HTML. There's not a tab element in HTML. So this is where we use ARIA to really expand on that functionality. So I'm going to
Tab 1.
go through this example with my screen reader.
Heading level 1. Tabs. Tab 1. Selected. Tab 1 of 3. Tab list. Tab group. Tab 2. Tab 2 of 3. Tab 3. Tab 3 of 3.
So maybe I should name this differently, but we see that it's calling out tab 3, that it's a tab, and it's telling me how many there are and which one I'm in. And you could even see that it's also telling me which one's active. So I'm going to go back to the first one.
Tab 1. Selected. Tab 1 of 3.
So we know
Current.
number 1 is selected, that there are 3, and that this is indeed a tab.
So
I'm going to go ahead and inspect this to show you kind of how that relationship works and how this is all coming together. But if I look at, and before I show you the computer properties here, I see that the div that's holding all of these tab buttons together have a role of tab list that tells assistive technologies that like, hey, this is a group of tabs that is coming here. And then under that, each button, so that it's operable by a keyboard, has a role of tab, so that it kind of tells the assistive technology that this is a tab within this tab list, all kind of working together. And then it also tells you what content they relate to. So tab number 1, and now that I'm looking at the computer properties, it tells me that it has a tab name. It tells me that it is selected, that it has a role of tab, that it even controls a content, which is this content right here. When I click it, it appears so that it's visible. But you can kind of see as I tab through it, as I unselect it, those properties will change. But yeah, this is kind of how everything works together and why missing ARIA attributes can be so crucial to somebody's experience. And here are some resources, which actually I'm going to just jump on this one right now, and I'll go over this in a little bit too. But if I go to the tab element, yeah, let's go to tabs. You can kind of see, and I'm kind of skipping ahead in my presentation, but I think this is important. You can kind of see that it talks about this pattern, like how would you make tabs, custom components for tabs? And it talks to you about the different roles and the different keyboard interactions that users will expect from this. And some of the ARIA roles, states, and properties that you would need to add for something like this. And I'm sorry, I'm going to scroll up a little bit. It's a little bit fast. But if I go to one of the examples here that they've listed, like example of a tab, they'll give you an example of what something like this looks like. So you can kind of play around with it. You can inspect it. It tells you all of the accessibility features that they've added, the keyboard support, as it is expected, and also kind of towards the end here, and I'm so sorry for the scrolling. I'm going to scroll just a little bit more. It'll give you the code for all of this. So you can kind of even open it in a code pen and start playing around with it, but you can kind of see how all of this maps together. But yeah, one little call out with ARIA though. No ARIA is better than bad ARIA. Let me repeat that so everybody can hear this. No ARIA is better than bad ARIA. According to that report that we were talking about, when a home page has ARIA present, it averaged almost 69% more detected errors than those that did not have ARIA. Now, again, I'm calling this out. Use this document to understand how to use ARIA appropriately, because this will break an experience. So there are some web components that will require ARIA to expand on that native HTML functionality, like the ones I called in this presentation, but be careful in your use of it because it will break somebody's experience. So I'll I'll just quickly go over this. I'm looking at the time. Making sure that you're including accessibility through your software development lifecycle in your planning, in your design, in your implementation, in your testing, right? And in your maintenance, and making sure that wherever you can, whenever you can, however you can, include people with disabilities, include people with lived experiences in every single piece of this process, because they'll make your websites more accessible, your process more inclusive, and it's just going to be an overall better product. Just a quick shout out that we do have an accessibility scanner available. And I know Hayden will send you this presentation later, so I'm not going to stay here too long, but it will scan your accessibility issues with ActScore. It will file GitHub issues through GitHub Actions, and it will even assign those issues to Copilot. Copilot will generate a fix, open a PR for you, and then you could just review and merge, making sure that you're reviewing them, make sure the fix is right. But yeah, hey, we have a few minutes for Q&A, so yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so many great tidbits in there. Like, and thank you for so many resources, Maria. Um, yeah, we have a few minutes here. I would like to say that I kind of went back and tried to answer some of the Q&A that popped up in the chat. But I guess we have a few minutes. Might as well open up for one or two different questions if y'all haven't, while I wait for any questions to potentially come through. Um, I will also say we are going to be sending this this slide deck, as well as the resources that I went through, as well as all the links in this slide deck. So hopefully y'all will be, hopefully y'all won't be too overwhelmed with the amount of resources. But I think that's also the beauty of the accessibility, kind of world, Maria, is that there are a ton of resources that are free that you are
So
able
many.
to utilize and make a more accessible, more inclusive kind of web experience. And once again, just a timely as well, because we are, currently approaching. So I don't see any new questions. So I'll kind of address the ones that were stated that I think were something that I could kind of pull on. There was a question during my talk about how population served was determined. This is a really kind of one of the more difficult questions to answer, but the DOJ, I'll kind of read my answer here, but the DOJ uses a population of the jurisdictional area the entity serves as the baseline. So for a city, it's just a city population. For a county, county, state, state. So obviously every state agency will have to be compliant by the deadline, or, that's the deadline, the April 26th. It gets complicated when we start talking about the special districts like water authorities and transit agencies, because I think the rule says they use the population of the geographic area they serve. So it can get a little fishy. My guidance was, if you're uncertain, then basically the cost of over preparing is zero. The cost of under preparing can be pretty significant. So I would still just try to be defensible at the very least by the 2026 deadline. Um, and another question that I don't feel like maybe I got on enough was, this compliance only applies to state and local government entities. That is correct, specifically around ADA Title II. But that may feel like it doesn't encompass, like, so I would like to point out city, county, state agency, public universities, public school districts, transit authorities, or any other state or local government entity that kind of falls and is directly, associated with a local state or local government. If you're a private company or a nonprofit, Title II doesn't apply, but Title III might apply to you. So look into that. Then what else? I tried to answer this with Maria. You might even have a better answer, and we can, well, we're at time. But y'all, if y'all have any other questions, please send them in. And we'll write an email and kind of send it out to everybody who attended, if any other questions pop up. But I really appreciate everyone attending. Maria, I really appreciate you going into depth on the audit. And yeah, thanks. You have any other last words, Maria?
Nope. Thank you all so much. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm available on LinkedIn and always happy to geek out about this stuff. So
Absolutely. Well, thank you all again. We'll talk to you soon.